Peace on earth. Ethan Indigo Smith here, the philosopher stoned. Here I discuss the esoteric and exoteric of all things, from the metaphysical to the political, and I leave no stone unturned. All right. So this subject weaves together so many streams of philosophy and thought that I've been focusing on for a while. And God bless my mom and dad for inspiring a lot of these ideas. So I had the privilege of being on the Occult Rejects with Justin Sledge, and I actually learned quite a bit from him, broadly and specifically with the video that I will be sure to link below, so to speak, on Ashera. And Ashera being the divine feminine in pre-Jewish culture and region, and variations of this divine feminine she had connections to these variations throughout. And my question to him was something I've been thinking about, and so naturally I thought that he would have thought about it too, but he is, to his credit, more orthodoxical, if you will. Not that he would ever be considered that by others in a sense, but he's more focused on the Western cosmology and spirituality and religion and ancient texts, and he's an astute academic. And I am a universalist, and I will, practice North Asian martial arts, South Asian yoga, and contemplate on, Egyptian mythos, and read or listen to Greek writing. And so I am a universalist, if you will. Again, not that one way is better, but so it turns out that I contemplated this question, and I don't think he did, and I don't think I asked the question properly. And my question, that is the seminal origin for this video, is what would the world be like if during the biblical Reformation we did not get rid of Ashera, the embodiment of the divine feminine? And I ask this in respect to the duality of polarity, which I'll go over real briefly, but just the universal aspects of the duality of polarity are striking to me as carrying great significance in inspiration and proactive consciousness. So Ashera is actually synonymous with pillar, and pillar, of course, is the pole. These are also the same thing. So let's see here. Share screen. I just wanted to share a couple of things. Okay, so we got the yin yang symbol. This is the grand ultimate polarity. That's actually the taijitsu is the grand ultimate polarity, made up of yin and yang, and made up of yin and yang in minor and major forms, the swirl and the dot. representing the minor and major. And so this is one of the really valuable contemplations on the duality of polarity. See if I can do this decently. Excuse my glitches in my technological presentation. Of course, here's a cross, and you could imagine this as two pillars intersecting. I'm sharing the exaggerated cross with the four, and this is the Jerusalem cross, I believe. But every cross, by mathematical rule, is going to be two lines intersecting, creating four corners. Okay. And this is such a matter of importance that I wrote a whole book about it. I'm trying to just focus on a couple of things here. Here's a depiction of the elimination of Ashera during the biblical formation. Again, she's known as a pole. Pillar. And forgive my presentation here. I haven't figured out how to do this properly. Okay, and here is a picture of Tel Arad. This is a site where they found an Asherah pillar or an Asherah pole that was buried over during the biblical Reformation. And again, a really striking duality of polarity here, if you will. And most of the duality of polarity of the world is not overtly presented. In fact, I would suggest it's overtly eliminated from consideration because partly it's that powerful of a thinking tool. In this site, they found the Asherah pillar had correspondence with the burning of cannabis. And this is really a big part of my book, Marijuana and the Prohibition of the Divine Feminine. James Campbell helped me out on that from Mendocino. Just an amazing depiction of the dual pillars of Yahweh and Asherah. Asherah being the contrast to Yahweh, the storm god. Yahweh, the storm god, is the creator god because, from water, from destruction comes life sometimes, right? But life can also come through not necessarily destructive, creative forces. But Yahweh is the storm god. Asherah is the feminine, creative in a less stormy, destructive manner, if you will. And from that, we could extrapolate that actually the dual pillars is in correspondence with other, again, the yin and yang. We have the Om symbol, which is a duality of polarity of consciousness. I've written extensively on this. I've discussed it before. I won't get into the the dynamics of the duality of polarity is I'll spare one my my repetition there. So let's see other things I wanted to share next. Not sure why I have to do that every time, but okay. So we have the duality of polarity of Yahweh and Ashera. And this is a really simple idea, but a really powerful concept, right? And I would suggest that it's in correspondence with an esoteric matter. Here is a depiction of the dual pillars of Yakin and Boaz. And this is in correspondence with, if you will, Yahweh and Asherah. We have the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy. We have the male and the female. So this also, again, in correspondence with one of the most widely celebrated symbols on the planet and one of the oldest symbols on the planet, the Tai Chi, the yin yang symbol, right? This is another way of depicting the grand ultimate polarity. So what are all these things I think pointing out? Not necessarily God. I think religion gets us onto the God topic, whereas spirituality is all about the godliness topic. Much more powerful as far as creating individual consciousness, right? So there's an expression. Again, this is maybe partly from where I asked this original question: where would the world be if we did not be rid of Ashera and the divine feminine in relation to the monothematic monotheism that we see having sprouted and ruled globally now? There's actually the three main religions, of course, are all monolithic, monothematic monotheism, all about the God aspect, not about the godly. I would suggest, and I suggest that simply by way of the monotheism, the monolithic. For if you always do a thing one way, that one way will eventually be the flawed mannerism, especially as the world changes and develops. We often need the pillars. We need some severity, but we often need mercy. There is this idea in the world, at least very much so in the West, that I'm inflicted and afflicted by. That if in order to do anything, we have to do it in a war. The war on drugs, the war on X, and we have a whole dynamic thought process that basically reverts to Yahweh or the severe pillar without considering the minor and major, yin and yang, the Ashera pillar of thinking. There is a wonderful symbol. I've explored this before in an article in depth. I like to call it the circumpunct. Most people call it the monad. sometimes I will use the monad idea in my head. Anyway, this here we have the circumpunct, and it's the circumpunct in between the two pillars. And there is, the monolithic aspect of these religions, I would say, to be politically correct, is worthy of being critical of. I would also add, though, that there are many wonderful ideas that one way or another we could look at being contained in, or maybe even originated in, these monotheistic religions. So the circumpunct is essentially a symbol for God and the two pillars. And this is actually a Freemasonic symbol. And I think this sums up the God versus godliness concept. And there I am. I'm putting in verses terms, and that's very much the war on things, isn't it? I, of course, being under the Yahweh monotheistic culture. If I forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but culture runs downstream of government. Government runs downstream of religion. And so we are all under the effects of religion, religiosity, and so on and so forth. When we are conscious of this, I think it is less likely to steer us in ways that are reactive, right? Much better to be responsible than reactive. When you are monolithic, one can easily be, sucked into the pattern of reaction. And there, that word, we think of it as an explosive thing, but it's also react, act again in the same way. It's like if you keep on looking for your lost item under the light, you know it's in the darkness, but you're in the light because you can see there. So here is the dual pillared godliness symbol. So where would the world be if we integrated the Ashera Polarity? It's a great big if, isn't it? And I would say it's hard to even fathom how different the world would be. But if we had more consideration of this feminine polarity, dare to say, the world would be a better place, right? That I think would be easy to point out. One contrast that I have been focusing on for a while is nukes or nugs idea. And really interesting that this is an interesting way to look at this destructive Yahweh and creative Ashera polarity in a very exoteric presentation. Nuclear experimentation, whether it's power generation or detonation, or there's medical uses too, questionable or not, there are medical uses. It's based on entropy. It's based on a destructive force. So we literally got streamed into this polarity of Yahweh destruction through entropy or creation through entropy. is kind of how they've put forth the nuclear experimentation, the planetary nuclear experimentation. Whereas the Ashera plant, the cannabis and hemp plants, these are all about creation through creation. There are all sorts of uses for cannabis. And I would propose, if it were legalized and never prohibited, rather, the world would be a vastly different place. Not only because of its effect on consciousness, mainly inspiring people to consider consciousness, and it also is the ultimate resource. It's arguable. And if we had other resources like what is available through the cannabis plant, we would have never considered global nuclear experimentation. So, what if the Ashera polarity was never prohibited in the biblical Reformation? And what if the pillars of understanding the masculine and feminine energies, and broadly, and from there, the intricacies of this duality of polarity, where would the world be? What if? Well, it's interesting. In California, there's all kinds of spiritual folks. I made a conscious decision when I was young that I would count on what was older, like Tai Chi, yoga, if you will. Whereas a lot of people I noticed in California openly declare on counting on what is newer. Again, I'm not trying to say which is right, which is wrong, but I would be highly critical of anything new age. And some people in California, you would know and guess, openly advocate for new age concepts. Some, of course, many of us all advocate on new age isms, if you will, without even knowing it. But one that just as a thinking human being struck me as a really stupid and nothing to do with advanced consciousness is this idea of don't dwell in the if. Don't even say what if. Focus on the now. Be present. And of course, there is some value to that. But to never say if, never say what if, well, that's really a sad place to be. Because if you don't say what if, you dwell on the what is, you will be mad, right? That's a much more devastating consciousness. If you just focus on what is rather than what could be, I'm talking about better situations and bettering possibilities. So, what if is about the main question to any development and invention. So it's a sad place to be if we don't say what if. It is also a good point to be present and understand what's going on presently, externally and internally. How else will we make a move to be better or develop and stay safe or any number of things? We have to know what is to know what can be. Reminds me of some quote. Maddest of all is to focus on what is rather than what should be and what could be. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, props to Justin Sledge. Shout out to the Rejects. not trying to be critical of his orientation of that question. I just think it's a really powerful idea, the what if of the divine feminine, the what if of the duality of polarity being fully integrated instead of just a singularity, but polarity and singular. That is limited. That's a duality. Duality certainly is limited. The duality of polarity, it is the simplest and most complete um, way to look at things. Not necessarily the best in all situations, but it still remains the simplest and yet complete. Um, I'll leave some links below to the interview with Justin Sledge and his Ashera video, and I'll leave links to some writing, of course. Thank you for your time and energy and attention. Appreciate you. One.